In recent months, we have all heard the phrase Doomsday thrown around more than usual. What started off as a distant threat has now become a very real concern for many people. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine and North Korea's aggressive actions on the Korean peninsula, it is hard to blame them for worrying about an imminent nuclear disaster. The last thing anyone would want is for the world to end in a nuclear blast. And while this may seem like a far-fetched idea, there are many examples throughout history of things that were once thought to be impossible becoming a reality. So what if I told you that a nuclear war could actually happen? Would you believe me? If not, then let's change that. In this video, we will explore the possibility of a nuclear war happening and what exactly it would look like. If you want to learn more about this topic and gain insight into something that many people choose to ignore, stay tuned until the end. Also, please remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you will be helping us reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers. With that said, let's begin. First, we need to understand how nuclear weapons work and the different types of attacks they can carry out. There are two main categories of nuclear attacks: strategic and tactical. Strategic attacks involve the use of high-powered nuclear weapons that target large areas. These attacks are usually carried out by long-range bombers or intercontinental ballistic missiles. Tactical attacks, on the other hand, involve the use of low-powered nuclear weapons that are designed to target smaller areas. These attacks can be carried out by various means, including fighter jets, cruise missiles, and even drones. The power of a nuclear weapon is measured in terms of its explosive yield, which is the amount of energy released when the weapon detonates. The most commonly used unit of measurement for nuclear weapons is the Hiroshima atomic bomb, which is the amount of energy released by the first atomic bomb ever dropped on Hiroshima, Japan, during World War II. Using this scale, a tactical nuclear weapon typically has a yield of less than 1 Hiroshima atomic bomb, while a strategic nuclear weapon has a yield of much higher. So what exactly happens during a nuclear attack? When a nuclear weapon detonates, it releases a massive amount of energy in the form of a fireball, a shock wave, and radiation. The fireball is the visible light and heat produced by the explosion. The shock wave is a pressure wave that can cause significant damage to buildings and other structures. Radiation, on the other hand, is the invisible energy that is released along with the explosion. This can take the form of gamma rays, X-rays, and neutrons. Now that we know how nuclear weapons work and the effects they can have, let's explore some of the scenarios in which a nuclear war could occur. One possible scenario involves a strategic nuclear attack carried out by a country such as Russia or China. If these countries were to launch a surprise attack on another country with their long-range bombers or ICBMs, it could quickly escalate into a full-blown nuclear war. For example, if Russia were to launch a strategic nuclear attack on Ukraine using ICBMs, it would likely trigger NATO's response, leading to a wider conflict that could potentially involve other countries with nuclear weapons, such as France, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Another possible scenario involves a tactical nuclear attack carried out by a non-state actor such as a terrorist group. In this scenario, a group could obtain a small nuclear weapon and use it to target civilians in a crowded area. The consequences of such an attack would depend on the size of the weapon and the target. However, it is possible that the fallout could lead to a larger conflict between countries. It is important to note that these scenarios are just theoretical, and there is no indication that either Russia or China plans to carry out a strategic nuclear attack or that any terrorist group currently possesses a nuclear weapon. Nevertheless, it is still important to consider all possible scenarios in order to be prepared for any eventuality. If a nuclear war were to occur, the immediate aftermath would likely be devastating. The explosion of even a single tactical nuclear weapon could cause widespread destruction and loss of life. The fireball and shockwave would cause significant damage to buildings and infrastructure, while the radiation would pose a serious threat to human health. Depending on the number and location of the weapons used, entire cities could be wiped out in an instant. In the event of a strategic nuclear attack, the consequences would be even more severe. The use of multiple high-powered weapons could result in the destruction of entire regions and the contamination of large areas of land and water with radiation. The global implications of a strategic nuclear attack would be profound. The dust and smoke from the explosions would block out the sun, causing darkness and disrupting climate patterns worldwide. Additionally, the use of nuclear weapons would likely trigger a global pandemic due to the release of radioactive materials into the atmosphere. Beyond the immediate physical and environmental consequences, the social and political implications of a nuclear war would be equally significant. A nuclear attack could lead to the breakdown of global order and the emergence of new alliances and conflicts. It could also result in the proliferation of nuclear weapons, as more countries seek to acquire them as a means of self-defense or deterrence. The psychological impact of a nuclear war would be equally devastating. The fear of nuclear attack could lead to widespread panic and social unrest. The knowledge that entire cities can be destroyed in an instant can be terrifying and could have lasting effects on the mental health of individuals and communities. Despite the horrific consequences of a nuclear war, it is important to remember that there are measures being taken to prevent it from happening. International organizations, such as the United Nations, are working to reduce tensions and promote diplomacy between countries. Additionally, treaties and agreements have been put in place to limit the spread of nuclear weapons and promote transparency and accountability among countries that possess them. However, it is important to acknowledge that these efforts are not foolproof, and that there is always the possibility that a nuclear war could occur. While it is important to be aware of the risks of nuclear war and the potential consequences, it is equally important not to let fear dictate our actions. Instead, we should focus on supporting organizations and initiatives that are working to prevent nuclear war and promote peace. We can also educate ourselves and others about the dangers of nuclear weapons and the significance of diplomacy and conflict resolution. Trump has been a primary advocate for diplomatic discussions to prevent nuclear wars. A nuclear war is a terrifying prospect that none of us wants to think about. But by understanding the risks and taking action to prevent it, we can all play a role in ensuring that it never happens. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about similar topics, check out some other videos we have available. You can also subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below to share your thoughts on the topic. Thank you for watching.